Bring it down, speak louder. Now what's my name? Step. Eagerly leaving the scene to go and chase his dream. On a mission wishing ever since he was only 15. With sincerity, I'll never give in to the popularity. The clarity's a rarity when you're compared to me. Now where were we? Where were we? And I don't mean to be cocky, but I'm never doing this sloppy. And all that hating, it's not me. So I'm original, no copy. Can't copy my swag. I'm spitting liquid, twisting like my name was Mickey Fast. And I'm the 11th freshman on the cover, double XL. Didn't get any recognition cause I forgot how to spell. Fixed it with the quick lyricisms, now I gotta spit quick as hell. So now I'm doing it well. Ain't hard, but I bet you can tell. And I'm locking my method, I said.
How's it going, everybody? This is Sam Shady. To my left, this is Barrett, quarterback of the FCF's Glacier Boyz.
What's up, everybody?
So if you haven't heard his story, you're in for a treat because it's definitely one of dedication and perfecting your craft over years and kind of fighting through all kinds of adversity throughout the path you've taken. So ultimately, thank you for joining me. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. We had basically not a 2-a-day, but we had lifting in the morning for quarterbacks and running backs and linemen. And then after that, we got after it for a walkthrough at Pullman, where we play our games at for about an hour walkthrough. And then I finished up some of my work with my other jobs that I do, outside of football as well. I got to do those a little bit today and just have some relaxation time. I met with the guy who's going to be calling our plays as well, going over some schematic strategies. Also talking about some plays that we like, some plays that we don't like, and so forth.
Nice. Interesting. We'll have to touch on that later because I was under the impression all the plays were called by the fans.
They are.
Really?
All of them are called by the fans. There are specific instances where the coaches can kind of, not interfere, but they have the power to kind of come in and almost do like what's known as a power play, which is basically change the play if they don't really like what's being called.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's very, very selective. Really 98% of the time to 99% of the time, the fans do call the plays. So for me, while the fans do call the plays, there is a specific amount of fans that do call the plays. And so for me, I wanted to connect with, the guys. His name is Frosty in Discord. Shout out to Frosty for, all the work that he's done with his team as well with Glacier Boy Nation. Guys like J Beast, I'm forgetting a few other ones, Spacely, those guys like, there's another one, Boykin for MVP, I think his name is. But, those guys are always really vocal. And then, Frosty does a great job in terms of understanding what we want, understanding what we like, and then calling the game based on that as well. I try to simplify everything for him as well.
Gotcha. So this is actually a fan?
Yeah, he's a fan.
That's awesome. Awesome.
I think, I'm not going to assume, but to my knowledge, I'm the only player who reaches out to the fans so that they're able to kind of call the game in a way that's, schematic and a way that kind of has a formula so that we're not calling, a reverse pass on like 3rd and 1 when we only need a yard to get the first down.
That makes sense. Interesting. That's a good strategy, man. I like it.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box there.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of learned that through, my years of playing and my experience with multiple teams. I found that, when I met with, when I was starting that week, or if I was playing a good amount, I would talk with my offensive coordinators. They would tell me like, this is like our strategy going in this game. These are the plays that we're going to call. These are situations that we're going in, what throws we're going to make, what runs we're going to make, and so forth. And so I was able to kind of take that knowledge and then bring it to the fans. And then by getting an idea as far as what fans understood and what they didn't understand, I was able to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down because fans are not dumb by any means necessary, especially in this league. They are very informative. They are very intelligent based on the knowledge that they know of the game, but based on the limited information that they're given in the sport. with the experience that like I have in the game as well. I'm able to collaborate with them and provide a different dimension that the FCF really hasn't seen yet, which is that interactive experience with the player.
Absolutely. That is so super cool. Super cool. I like that thought process. So before we get too far into the FCF, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. Why don't you go ahead and start with a brief introduction to your career, and then we'll get into detail as we go.
Yeah. So, again, my name is Chris Barrett. I am a quarterback for the FCF Glacier Boyz. I started playing football when I was about 11. And, Sam and I were actually talking right before the show how he is an Eagles fan and I am a big-time Eagles fan as well. I'm not very, outward about my passion, but I kind of keep it to myself. I started, wanting to play football when I was 11 years old after I saw the Eagles get beat by the Patriots, and I was sitting next to my dad, and I told him at the party that we were at that I was going to be the next Eagles quarterback, and we were going to win the Super Bowl. I was going to be the quarterback at that time. Nick Foles kind of took my place. Thank God for Nicky Six. And that's actually the guy. So, I might have not been the quarterback who won the Super Bowl for the Eagles, but a lot of my game is based on, Nick Foles and the mentality that he brings to the game as well, and just his approach to the game and just being one of the guys. And not to get too far off topic, but I wanted to play. I didn't get to play until I was in, 7th grade. And I was so far behind everybody, even athletically, that I thought, I'm just going to come here and throw the ball. Well, there's a lot more to quarterback than just throwing the ball and understanding what coverages there are as well, especially at the 7th grade level. I found out that at that time, I'm like, hey, they need somebody a little bit more mobile. And I was not really the best athlete in the world. Still am not. I just improved my athletic skill as my career kind of went along. And, I was pretty much a backup the entire time that I was in middle school all the way to high school. My first high school at Owen J. Roberts. Wasn't getting much of an opportunity. So then my grandfather signed me up for the Glenn Foley football camp, who ended up becoming not only my quarterback coach, Glenn Foley, my head coach at Valley Forge, not only my head coach at Valley Forge, but ended up becoming my quarterback's coach as well for many years to come after that. My junior year, I came in. I was actually a starter for JV, not varsity. We had a post-grad program at the time. And then we ended up going undefeated. I got a ring for being a prep national champion that I keep on my keychain. Never really told people that I was a starter or not. I don't really bring that into conversation. But we did end up getting a national championship ring for, our division. And then I went into my senior year, knowing that I was going to get a chance to compete for a starting job, which I did. But Coach Foley ended up leaving. And then they brought in a new coach, Matt Dents, who, I have a very good relationship with now. Hell of a coach, very, very, very good guy. But because I had such an enmeshed and attached relationship to Coach Foley, it really inhibited my progress in terms of, what I was able to do with Valley Forge. And I was so focused on playing football the way Glenn Foley had taught me that I was missing some of the key concepts that Coach Matt Dents ended up trying to teach me and incorporate me into at Valley Forge. I ended up starting the first game, when I was at Valley Forge. We ended up winning 40-6. The very next week, he starts the post-grad quarterback, Chris Andrews, who actually ended up having a pro career as well. He's actually a quarterback for the Salina Liberty, who I was in camp with this past year. He actually got signed by them last week or so. And, for the rest of the season out, I was pretty much on the bench. So all the offers that I got from all the camps that I went to and all the recognition that I got from the camps that I went to ended up kind of going by the wayside. But in the off season, I ended up getting a lot of Division III looks. And then one day, West Virginia Wesleyan called me. Came down on a visit. I really loved the program. I knew that they were looking at Nate Montana, who was Joe Montana's son, but I didn't think that they were going to sign him. So I ended up committing to West Virginia Wesleyan. After I got there, I didn't have my Wesleyan account email set up at that time, which I found out that I should have at that point, because I would have found out that our offense coordinator ended up leaving to get a job at the University of Florida, which was great for him. And then they brought in a new offensive coordinator. And then on top of that, they ended up bringing in Joe Montana's son, along with Joe Montana at times, which was really cool for me because that was my idol growing up. I even have a poster of him in my room at my grandfather's house. So, you know, I got to meet him. Then I went over to, you know, West Virginia Wesleyan. I ended up having about a 2.5 career there. You know, I played sparingly, but I was still, you know, dealing with the issue to be athletic, which I ended up working on with, you know, my trainer and mentor now, Johnny Carlisle, who helped me for so many years establish, you know, the dynamic ability of, you know, not just Chris Barrett the thrower, but Chris Barrett the athlete as a quarterback as well. Then I ended up leaving after my redshirt sophomore season in 2014. I ended up transferring to Teal College, which I got a good opportunity to compete for a starting job. The only issue was that I ended up being, meeting somebody there along the way, who I was later on engaged to. And so when I was at Teal, I ended up, you know, lasting for that spring and then a few days into camp. And then I kind of had to make a decision on whether I was going to be there for my family or whether I was going to be there to compete for a starting job at Teal. And I chose my family. So I went there and, you know, things weren't, it just long story short, it just didn't work out. But I ended up enrolling at her school while we were still together at Alderson Broadus. And I ended up going out for a football team that spring season. I was originally going to go out in fall, but at that time I was still with my ex-fiance. And so I decided to work for the fall semester while still training sparingly. I ended up going to, you know, compete with them in the springtime. At that point, we were done. Even though I was a senior going in, they still gave me the opportunity. I took it and I rolled with it the best possible way I could. I ended up having a really good spring game. I ended up going, I think, 5 for 6 for 70 yards on one drive. But a few days later, you know, we were having our exit meetings. I talked to Coach Kurt Campbell, great coach. I think he's actually the Old Dominion's offense coordinator now. And he even pleaded his case for me to Coach Denny Crehan, coached in the CFL for a little bit, that, you know, I was willing to come on as the backup holder just to be on the team. And then Coach Crehan kind of made the decision of like, look, we have 3 freshman quarterbacks coming in. On top of that, we have all our guys returning next year. At this point, you'll be the 9th quarterback slated. We want you to come in and we want you to be a student coach and in the camp. And I said, no, because I feel like I've done enough to at least secure a spot in camp and to show what I can do and show that I can improve.
Yeah.
Then he pretty much just said that. And then I said, Coach, like, look, I just want to be on a team. Like, my aspirations are to play after college and to do whatever I can to play professional football after college. And he looked me in the face and he said, kid, you're not going to do any of that. He's like, no team will take you, not even arena. And from there on out, I took that as a motivating factor. I called my mentor right away, and Johnny had said, okay, plan B. He's like, come home, start training. And so I started training, and then I ended up hooking on with their Sinus College. And then they ended up, you know, telling me that I could come in, I could compete for the starting job. And then about a month before camp starts, I get a call from Coach Gallagher. And, you know, great coach. He's been there for, you know, 20-something years. But he ended up telling me that, you know, hey, we're actually going to need you to come in and play receiver. At that time, you know, I didn't realize that they had a freshman quarterback coming in that they were going to groom to eventually be the starting quarterback, Tommy Garlick. But you know, at first I didn't know what to say. I almost said no. And then I talked to my mentor right afterwards, and he said, you're not going to do that. He's like, you're going to go there, you're going to do whatever they tell you to do, and you're going to play the best you can. And so I ended up going there. I was a horrible receiver for 15 days. And then he moved me back to quarterback. But at that point, I was on the scout team because they already had an established starter. So I was getting practice reps throughout the entire season. I didn't get in a game once my senior year, even in the senior game when we were winning by 40. But then I remember talking to my good friend Chuck Anderson, otherwise known as Big Pub Chuck. Shout out to you. And he ended up, just telling me that you decide when you make your own history, you make your own story. And I was at my lowest point at that point, and he was 110% right. And because I finished out my senior season at Ursinus, and because I was able to do that, I was then able to not only register for the Philadelphia Soul tryout, which was the first of 28 professional football tryouts that I ended up going to, but I was also able to get into the NFL Regional Combine, because at that time the rule was if you were a senior the year before and finished your college season, no matter whether you played or not, you were allowed to come on to the team. And for me, that was, or you were allowed to come to the combine. For me, I mean, that was enough. I mean, I ended up training. I ended up doing really well over there. Didn't get any particular looks, but I got a lot of really good coaching. And then right after that, the very next day, I ended up getting that day, I ended up getting a call from my agent, and he says, you need to get ready to go to training camp with the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks. I was like, okay, when? He's like, tomorrow. And mind you, I had just got done a 6-hour combine, and I had to drive home 3 hours out of the way. And then I had school the very next day. And I think I had an exam or two that I ended up not doing too well on. But, nonetheless, I ended up going to, training camp with the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks. I met Coach Thompson. He did a great job of coaching me. And then he ended up sending me down to Reading, which I eventually just, went over there, did really well over there, but I ended up tearing my ACL about 4 games into the season. Bounced back the very next year. I was a starter for about 4 games, and I split time with another guy for about 2 or 3 more games. And in that time, I was able to throw 23 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in split playing time. So because I was able to do that, I was able to show that I could play the game at a highly productive level. Once I got into the very next season, I ended up going to a ton of those tryouts. I ended up hooking on with a few semi-pro teams, the Northeast Raiders, Northeast Philadelphia Raiders, the Philadelphia Red Raiders, the East Penn Red Raiders, or East Penn Raiders back in 2020. As well as the New Jersey Stags last year. And then I think another team in between there, but I can't remember which one exactly. But in between there, I was able to see time with, not only the Reading Raptors and Lehigh Valley Steelhawks, but also the Jersey Flight of the NAL. Was able to be in training camp with the Slion of Liberty this past year. And ultimately, I got cut out on the last day. But as I was driving home, I ended up getting a phone call. I made a phone call to Danny Southwick, because I ended up getting into the pro day at Rutgers this year, and ended up getting a throw to Bo Melton, as well as I think his name is Alvin Pacheco, the running back for them. And then Danny pretty much said, well, what are you doing, that Sunday, which was March 19th? And I said, nothing. He said, you got to fly down here and you got to go to the last tryout. And I said, okay, cool. So I ended up talking to my grandfather. He was gracious enough to take care of my plane ticket, which, the common theme in this whole interview is going to be, without him, I would not have gone nearly as far in my football career as I am now. And then I, got interest from pretty much everybody there. Devlin Isidore, I was his backup this year. He was actually the first one who came up to me, and he said, we want you, he said, listen, you're probably the best one here. And it was after 3 throws, and he had my back. And I know that to some extent, he played some of a part of me getting here, and I'm very appreciative of that. But, ever since then, I ended up coming here. I got COVID after about 7 or 8 days here. I stayed in my room for about 10 days. I was on 2 different teams before I ended up getting drafted by the Glacier Boyz. And then I was his backup for about 2 weeks. And then he unfortunately went down with his injury. And, now I'm here.
Absolutely. How's he doing, by the way?
He's doing well. He's getting I don't know the extent as far as what he's doing, nor do I want to disclose any, information that
No, absolutely.
he's going through as well, especially medical information or, what's happening in his personal life, but he's doing really well. He's just really excited to get back on the field.
Okay, cool. That's all I was asking. Sorry.
Yeah.
I saw the injury. It could have been bad. I just hoping he's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I want him to be able to disclose that. It's nothing you did. It's just that,
No, I gotcha.
I respect him as a man and as a football player as well.
I understand 100%. I appreciate you answering it the way you did.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your childhood and how the things you faced when you were younger kind of molded you into the man you are today.
Well, I faced a lot of obstacles growing up, especially dealing with some of the circumstances that I saw, with my parents, and the stuff that they had to endure in their marriage as well, which eventually led to their divorce when I was 11. A lot of those, instances that like I had to kind of put myself through, especially when my stepdad came into the picture, developed some latent anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder, which, my therapist and my psychiatrist both diagnosed me with. I was scared to make a lot of mistakes because I just didn't want to get yelled at. I didn't want to get berated. I didn't want to get insulted. I mean, there were just awful things that were just, being said to me and, involving me, that I had to kind of just bystand. And, the hardest part about it is that, when I looked for, my mom to support me, I mean, she did her job in terms of, helping me get a lot along the way, and getting me into schools, and getting me into, opportunities as well, and helping me in my schoolwork. But when it came to just being able to stay there and, be, stand up for me to, my stepdad, who was very abusive towards me, physically, emotionally, and, really only one time physically, she was never really anywhere to be found. So a lot of my trust issues were developed later on. I faced a lot of, and not only that, but she was just always getting involved in every which way. So, the hardest part for me was being able to recognize that just wasn't healthy, and it ended up, kind of continuing into my career, skills that I wasn't necessarily able to really learn until, learn how to cope with until I was about 24. With my first therapist, Joe Dowling. And, by being able to cope with some of these, traumas that I faced and normalize that, it's okay not to be okay. And then eventually going to, see doctors like Dr. Anthony Mina and, my now therapist, Dr. Kim Willis. They were able to, and even, my psychiatrist, Dr. Laura Salameno, they were able to normalize some of the things that I was going through and, help me be okay with who I am, the good and the bad. And I feel like a lot of players today, not all of them, but I feel like a lot of players today feel as if they don't have somebody to talk to. Their problems, like, they'll almost say, like, all the time, excuse my language for saying this, like, oh, this is some bitch shit, like shit like that, because they feel as if they can't be heard. They their problems can't be normalized, and they don't have anybody to talk to. And part of me doing this interview is for me to be able to say that the circumstances that I dealt with as a kid, you don't have to fight it alone. You don't have to deal with it alone. Like, there's somebody out there to listen to you. Whether it's a paid professional or one of your friends, you just need to let them know, listen, I need to be heard, and I don't need to be judged. And if they're going to judge you, then that means that they're not right for you. My mom judged me a lot. My stepdad judged me a lot. And, now I'm able to recognize that that's not healthy support, because I'm also able to have people like my grandfather, like my mentor, like my fiance, Jeanette Jefferson, even her family, and then my friends, my best friend, like my best friend in the world, Deji Badru, who loves me and supports me unconditionally without a single piece of derogatory word coming my way.
That's awesome. The kind of people you need around you, for sure. Any person needs around them, to be clear. When you originally began playing football, were you always a quarterback?
Yes, I was, and no, I wasn't. So they ended up moving me to, let's see, my seventh grade year. They started me at D tackle for one game. That was awful. And then they ended up putting me on. And they ended up putting me at tight end for one game. Actually, no, not one game. They ended up putting me for tight end an entire season before I ended up transferring to Valley Forge my 10th grade year. And that was really, really bad. So, I played all over. I would consider myself an athlete, but only in emergency type of situations.
Gotcha.
But if a coach needs me to play, whatever, especially in the NFL, I'm going to do the best I can to do it. I'm going to learn that position tomorrow, coach.
There you go. So talk to us about your experiences while playing high school football. I mean, you talked about not really getting a whole lot of playing time and stuff. And I want to kind of hear at what point you determined that you were for sure going on to the professional world.
Well, I mean, I guess it was always determined when, I was 11 years old, because that was my goal. That was my ambition. It really didn't start clicking that this is something that I was going to do until I was in about 11th grade. And I started going to all these camps like Football University, that my quarterback coach Glenn Foley ended up helping me get into. That's when it really did start. That's when I said, like, okay, I want to be able to do this. And all the adversity that I had overcome at that point, I said, I know that I can do this, and I believe in myself that I can do this, but I have to really, truly embrace and believe in myself and who I really am. And I did that light bulb didn't really go off until, I was 27. Like that, like true belief in myself of, no matter what happens, like I'm a great player, and I know that I'm a great player, and I know that I'm going to continue to get better. It didn't happen until my later years.
That's interesting. That's interesting to hear. I know a lot of guys, especially quarterbacks, talk about confidence being big in their game. So it's funny to hear that you didn't get it until fairly recently, apparently.
No, I mean, I guess because of, me always being able to chase that internal confidence in myself just as a human being. I didn't really get that until, like I said, 26, 27 years old. Really, when I met my fiance is when I really started to truly believe in myself. And it wasn't because I had somebody, but because I was able to be with somebody who accepted me truly for who I was and not judge me for the person that I am. No matter how many fights I got into, I never got blamed for being me. I never got looked down upon for being me. And not that my friends didn't do that, but because I was able to get that confidence in myself and to get that safe home to go home to, that's when it propelled me to be able to do better things and do bigger things, because I had a different motivation. I wanted to keep that peaceful lifestyle for myself because I relished it so much. And I also wanted to reward the person who did so much for me.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. I feel that entirely. So despite primarily being a backup in high school, you wound up still receiving offers to colleges. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your recruitment process before you ultimately decided on West Virginia Wesleyan.
Well, the thing is, it's at the time when I was in 11th grade, I was going through a lot of these camps. I was getting interest from, I ended up going to a few camps in Temple. Temple was semi-interested in me. When I went to Penn's camp, they were really interested in me as well. They knew that I was a good student, but they also knew that I was a good player. And they just told me, you're at about a 3.3. Let's get that GPA up to 3.6. And then, we can definitely talk because we like what you do. And then I received a letter one day of somewhat interest from University of Arizona. And then I also received one from UDEL at one point. So before my senior year, I was receiving interest just based on just going to these camps alone and being able to show out and ball out in front of college scouts. It was just a matter of being able to, capitalize on the opportunity going into an actual football experience. But those foundation and those bricks and those kind of pillars were starting to be built in my earlier years that would eventually carry me into where I am now.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. So when you got to school, who were your coaches as a freshman, and how did these coaches affect your career long-term?
So are you talking about West Virginia, like my college career?
Yeah, Wesleyan. Sorry about that.
So they were very instrumental in it. They Coach Jonas Jackson, he actually coached a lot of the players, or actually not a lot of the players, but some of the players here. He coached, Joe Coletto, who's an offensive lineman, and then he actually also coached David Handler, who's director of player personnel over here as well. And everywhere he's gone, he's always ran his programs like a professional organization, making sure that the players really have everything that they need, but they also have the professional accountability as well. So it's hard coaching, but it's player style coaching too. Really learned a lot from, how to operate a professional organization, especially when you're dealing with grown men. But then also too, I was able to learn from, my offense coordinator, Tommy Ziegler, who was a great coach at Scottsdale, Arizona. And he really embraced the, he followed Glenn Foley a lot. He saw a lot of the mechanical fundamentals that he taught, and it was very similar to how he taught as well. And then being able to not only see the fundamental process in it, but also being able to see the schematic approach to it as well. Like, this is how you read these types of defenses, especially when you're in an air raid offense. These are the guys that you're keying. These are the types of concepts that will work great against this defense, and so forth. He was very instrumental in that. And then being able to be surrounded by players. I mean, that year was the second best quarterback room I was ever in, minus the one that I was in with the Jersey Flight, when I got to be behind Warren Smith and Danny Southwick. At that year, I was a redshirt freshman, but I was behind Nate Montana, Joe Montana's son. I was behind Jeremy Musselman, who was an all-conference quarterback, 2 years after that as well. He was actually a preseason All-American at that point. And then Zane Zabrowski, who was a preseason All-American at West Virginia Wesleyan in his freshman and sophomore year, as well as a two-time and successful starter there as well. And then he ended up going over to play in Germany and threw 7 touchdowns in his first game.
Wow. That's insane. Did he play for the GFL?
I don't know whether he played for the GFL. I can't really – I really don't know. And I forget. I think he played for the Lübeck Cougars under Coach James Germany. I think his name was.
I'm not familiar with it, so I think it is in the GFL. I cover the ELF, but not very closely. Let's just say that. It's
nonetheless, I mean, I was just surrounded by a huge crop of talent that year.
Absolutely.
Just across the board. Even, our entire team was just stacked. I mean, we didn't have the record that we wanted to, but the talent that surrounded that organization was incredible.
Absolutely. So you kind of briefly touched on it earlier. What led to your decision to ultimately leave Wesleyan?
Well, like I said, I was engaged at one point with my ex-fiance. Actually, no. Let me back up. So at the time when I was at West Virginia Wesleyan, I wasn't getting the playing time that I really thought at the time that I should have. They had a new coaching staff with Coach George Shell and his staff. They really wanted somebody who was a mobile-based quarterback to be able to extend the play. And I was also dealing with issues with anxiety, which I ended up overcoming later on internally onto the field and being able to be present in the moment. When I got to, Wesleyan, or mind you, let me back again. So when I got there my sophomore year, I was told that I was going to come in and I was going to be the backup quarterback. Well, I ended up being the third quarterback going into camp, and they kind of switched their decision last minute. Even though I had a good fall camp, they still slated, at that time, the backup quarterback, Tyler Bowen, they still slated him as the backup quarterback. But what that did was it ended up opening more opportunities for me during the season when injuries did happen and stuff did happen, off the field as well, for me to be able to have a chance to play. The only problem was that at the end of training camp, I was already in talks with Teal and Allegheny to be able to transfer to one of those schools. So, I don't know how it happened. I'm not going to speculate how it happened because I don't want to, throw shade in anybody. But I ended up being pulled into the office one day and said, hey, we know that you're transferring to one of these schools. We know that we've been giving you opportunities in practice. Really, right now, we're going to have you as the third quarterback. And if anything does happen to, Jeremy or Tyler, then you would play. But we got to focus on those guys right now because Jeremy's a senior and Tyler is going to be here next year. So I understood, and I just kind of played my part. And I was lucky enough for them to be able to dress me and travel with me for the rest of the year. I mean, give me that, experience of still being able to watch and learn at the same time. But yeah, that's pretty much, what led me to Teal and, be able to get some great coaching from Coach Satterfield. And yeah.
Definitely. So you kind of briefly touched on it. A young woman led to your decision to leave Teal.
Yeah.
So how did that all come about? You ended up following her to another school, or?
Yeah, so I ended up following her to another school. I actually met her while I was at Wesleyan. We had a great relationship. It didn't work out, but at the time when I was engaged, I wanted to do what was right by my family, and that's me. I'm always going to do what's right by my family, and they're always going to come first, no matter where my football career does take me. But at the time, being 21, I was a lot more impulsive in situations than I am now at 28, and I didn't have the respect in the relationship of being able to go away and be able to focus on my job and be able to focus on the task at hand.
Absolutely. So this led you to Alderson Broadus? Is that correct?
Alderson Broadus.
Broadus, sorry about that.
Mo Thomas, he's a receiver for the Board Apes. He actually went there. He actually went there the year after I left.
Really?
Yeah.
Ironic, man. Lots of small school connections here.
Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
So were you playing any sports at all when you weren't playing football, or was that just you were just focused on the family at that point?
When I transferred to Alderson Broadus?
Yeah.
I was still throwing and I was still working out because I knew that I was going to go into spring season and play. But at that point I was working at Sheets, and I was working 40 to 45 hours at Sheets. But the good thing about it was that at the time my rent was $375 a month. So I could work 40 hours at Sheets and then still have enough money to go, take my, ex out to dinner or do nice things and whatnot.
Nice. That's awesome. So ultimately, despite being in college at this point, the fact that you were nearing your final year of eligibility affected how the coaching staff viewed your play. What happened with AB that led to your departure from a third college in as many years?
Really at that point, I had my ex-fiance had and I had broken up. And also too, with me being asked to come back as a student coach when the whole time I just wanted to play. I mean, and also 6 hours away from my real family. I mean, it just didn't really make sense for me to come back there. And not only that, my grandmother was nearing, her end as well. And so I wanted to be home with my family and make sure that I was there with them. So I said, okay, even though I'll have to transfer yet again, I still have an opportunity to come home, go to a different environment, and then be around my family and also be around my mentor, who was also my trainer at that time. So that in the case that, worst case scenario or even best case scenario happens with football, I have somebody there that is still going to make sure that I'm right to pursue a professional career after college as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you talked about it earlier. You got in for one drive in AB, and you completed 5 of 6 passes for 70 yards on the only drive you were given. How did it affect you as a player playing that well and still being told that you weren't going to be given the opportunity?
It just drove me, and especially drove me when Coach Creahan told me that I just wasn't good enough to play professionally. At the time, I just didn't have any direction because I was like, where the hell do I go now? But after talking with my mentor at that point, and when he said plan B, I already knew what the next step was. And that was to come home, to train, to work my ass off, and to, put myself in an opportunity to just get better. And I guess that's where the focus of my career kind of like started to evolve. That it was about getting on the field and it was about playing, but it was also about being able to enjoy the ride of getting better and the thrill of improvement and the joy of improvement every single week, every single day, every single second that you have a chance to get better. You went mute.
Sorry about that.
You're fine.
So we kind of touched on it before. You are not the greatest athlete in the world when it comes to playing quarterback. Yet you're, oh man, I'm going to butcher this name. Ursinus? Ursinus? Okay. They asked you to switch to wide receiver, which I thought was kind of funny when I first saw that. I was like, wait a minute. You've said to me multiple times off camera that you're not the greatest athlete, so it kind of made me laugh. But how did that all come about? I mean, how did they determine that you would be a decent receiver?
That's a really good question. I really don't know. I think because they heard that I played tight end in high school, it kind of influenced them a little bit. But then they also saw my size. They knew how much I weighed because at that time I was 6'2", 202. I was getting lean, but that way I could move better because at the time I didn't know how to incorporate not only my lifting style, but also my running style into one and be able to utilize my hips efficiently to be able to move at 220. But, they said, well, you're good size. Let's put your receiver, see how you do kind of deal.
Interesting. Yeah, it was one of those things that kind of just stuck out to me. I was like, what?
They were doing everything they could to get me on the field, and I appreciate that.
There you go. That's what you hope for as a player.
Exactly.
So ultimately, after about 2 weeks, the experiment was over and you were back at QB. However, you simply weren't getting the playing time you were looking for. At this point, you suffered setback after setback. How do you continue to stay driven through all of this? And how did it affect you mentally off the field?
I mean, the end goal was always to play professional football. And that was my focus. That was my passion. That was my dream. And, I knew that there were going to be struggles that kind of came about it, but I guess that's what I meant by like the focus just became not only on just becoming a professional athlete, but, doing this because, it was a passion of mine. It was something that was an escape of mine. And it was also something that was like Danny Southwick and I talked about it the other night. Like it was a challenge for me. And it's a challenge for you to do something that's extremely difficult and super, super hard, but it's something that just keeps you going. And it's something that makes you feel right, especially when you get in situations where you are winning, where you are doing things, correctly and doing things efficiently. There's such a broad perspective on why I kept going. But the biggest reason was I just wanted to keep proving not only to other people, but to myself wrong. And shatter my limitations. I think that's why I'm such a big Dragon Ball Z fan. It's because, Goku is always constantly shattering his limitations all the time. Vegeta is always shattering his limitations all the time. And it's from their drive to just not only become the best, but want to be better than that and be better than that and then be better than that.
That's awesome. Great analogy, by the way. So following college, you find yourself undrafted, unfortunately, and scrambling to find a way to continue your career. This is when you attend the tryout with the Philadelphia Soul, apparently your hometown team, which I don't know how I didn't catch that before, but it was kind of a star-studded ownership group. It was right after Bon Jovi owned the team, if I'm not mistaken. There was Ron Jaworski, Dick Vermeil, Marquise Colston, and Jari Evans, former Saints players. How did this tryout lead to find the opportunity you needed to make a roster?
Well, it kind of kicked off everything because from there, like I kind of used it as an opportunity to build connections with other people. At the time, one of my good friends who ended up being a quarterback for the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks, who I ended up competing with in training camp, Aaron Channing, the year before, he went to a similar one. He went to the Philadelphia Soul tryout and he ended up doing really well. And then he got interest from Coach Chris Thompson, who was working at the camp. And then he said, hey, we want you to come to camp with us. And so similar situation happened with me. I ended up going there. I ended up doing really well. But at first I didn't get interest from Coach Thompson. I ended up going up to him myself and, saying, hey, Coach, like, I want to know how I can get better. And I want to know how I can improve because this is definitely not the last stop for me. And he said, well, first and foremost, you did a great job today. It's obviously you don't know the arena game just yet. You don't understand the spacing of it just yet. But but, you know, here's my card and then we'll talk. And so I ended up hooking on with Agency Athlete, who was, you know, my old agent, Josh Sellert. And then he ended up reaching out to Chris Thompson for me because he was just reaching out to all the local teams on my behalf. And he said, well, does Chris want to come in for, you know, a two-day workout? And that 2-day workout ended up turning into a whole week. And I ended up doing really well down there and, you know, going to Reading. And then pretty much from there, like, I just kind of built connections throughout my entire career, whether it be, you know, going to the ANC combines and showcases, and then, you know, getting a reputation with their staff, as well as getting a very good relationship with, you know, Coach Stephen Austin, you know, who I still talk to this day, and, you know, going to, you know, multiple arena tryouts, and then getting my name known in the arena community all across the nation, not just in the East Coast, but going to the Iowa Barnstormers tryout, you know, going to Salina Liberty and being in camp with them for a little bit, you know, even with the FCF, I mean, just being well known and building connections along with that. It kind of all just started at the Philadelphia Soul Tryout, and understanding the importance behind building connections, regardless, and not only connections, but understanding the improvements that you needed to make based on what the coaches did say to you at these tryouts and at these combines as well, which led me to where, you know, I kind of am today. And really what I learned from, you know, the first official tryout that I ever did in my pro career.
That's amazing. So you mentioned another quarterback that I did not stumble across that was at that tryout. What about 2017 MVP Warren Smith?
Yeah.
You guys kind of followed each other multiple stops. It was kind of interesting to see.
You know, Warren is a hell of a guy. He's been a very, very good mentor of mine in my career. You know, I had the opportunity to not only get in camp with them with the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks, but I got to be his backup last year with the Jersey Flight. And there's just so much knowledge that he brings to the game. We approach it from a very similar perspective. He's very analytical in his approach as far as, you know, how he approaches his game, what he talks about, coverage recognition and everything. And now, you know, I'm communicating with my teammates the exact way that, you know, Warren communicated. It's like when they say cover two, I'm saying sky. And, you know, Jamil AJ, he's saying, no, that's cover two. I'm like, no, that's sky. Or like cloud or double cloud or backside cloud or, you know, off man or combo. Like all of those terms I really learned from him and watching him, and the structure of being able to, you know, jot down notes within, you know, my defensive study or study of practice, getting them all on a list, writing a specific play on a specific hash. You know, was it incomplete or complete? And what are the other notes that are built upon that as well? Was it red zone? Was it, you know, going out? Was it, you know, inside the 20 to the 10? You know, all those things I really got to learn from Warren Smith, who, you know, is not only a great player, but he's a hell of a coach for Lacey High School.
That's awesome. I did not know he coached on the side. That's cool.
Yeah, he's incredible. He really, really is. And he's a great coach. He actually sent his one of his quarterbacks to Rowan University as well.
Very nice. Very nice. That's awesome. So during your time with the Steelhawks, they actually sent you down to the Reading Raptors, or is it Reading?
Reading.
Okay, Reading Raptors. Okay. So how did that whole partnership work between those two teams?
Well, Reading was their feeder team at the time, and they ended up becoming a pro incentive-based league. But at the time, they were just doing so well because of all the players that they were getting from the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks that they should have been a pro team. I mean, we were averaging that year 80 points a game.
Wow.
We almost got up to 100 one game. I mean, we were just rolling teams. Even at that time, you know, I was splitting time with a guy who was the league MVP that year, ended up throwing 33 touchdowns, 1 interception, Brian Morris. But, you know, before I got hurt, he was number one, and I was about a touchdown behind him for touchdown passes in the league.
That's crazy. So you guys had basically like the top two passers in the league on the same roster.
So it was so cool too, because we would almost like outdo each other. I'm like, hey, MFer, you just threw 5. I'm going to throw 6 like that. And it was
awesome
doing that. I mean, like one of the best times, like, and it was so bad that I had the injury that I did, because that was one of the best and most fun times in my career. Coach Ian Cooper and Coach Morris Mayon, or Coach Mo, is what we call him as, they did a hell of a job in terms of making sure that I had a knowledge of the arena game, not just from the one-man motion, but the two-man motion as well, and being able to conceptualize and read coverages very well. I mean, shout out to them for all the great work that they not only did for me, but for other players as well, getting them ready for the next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you stayed in Reading for 3 seasons. Talk to me about what this time did for you as a quarterback in terms of confidence, like you said, film study, stuff like that.
Well, that opportunity, along with other opportunities that ended up coming about, really served as my chance to play that I didn't really get the chance to in high school or college. And so by being with the Reading Raptors, they gave me the platform to, not only have success, but also to make mistakes and to grow from those mistakes as well. It's not that I was worried about. It's not that I was worried about ever. It's not that I was ever worried about like making a mistake or anything like that. And it's not that you didn't have the fear of getting cut over there. But if you made a mistake, instead of not playing you the next week, they would put you back in that situation. They would coach you on that throughout the week, because we would have practices that week, make sure that you understood that as well, and then put you back in that situation, give you a second shot to be able to show that you could do the job as well. And then, when I was struggling coming back from my ACL injury in 2018 into 2019, and then understanding and conceptualizing the reads from then going from the two-man motion where I'm like in the gun all the time to now going back under the center and then understanding the one-man motion of game, they were not only very patient with me, but they also gave me the opportunity to see other teams as well, and to have an opportunity to not only go out and play for other teams, but welcome me back with the spot as well. Anytime that I come home, because I played for multiple indoor teams throughout my entire career, anytime that I had the opportunity to, go to one of their tryouts just to get work in, they welcome me with open arms. They still do to this day, regardless of who I play. So, great job to them, and great job to their organization for, not only providing me that platform, but other players that platform as well.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. I mean, in my mind, that's what a developmental league should be. I mean, These coaches should be going above and beyond, and it sounds like yours did. And that's great.
And it wasn't just a semi-pro league where it was a beer league either. We were getting legitimate players coming down to this organization that I had the chance to not only play with, but play against as well, to really hone my craft so that I could get an opportunity like I have with the Fan Control Football League, and then capitalize on that as well based on what I was able to do in Reading.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, one of the big things that I hate hearing is that, you constantly hear people say with all these leagues launching, the XFL, the USFL, the FCF, we could go on for days with all the different leagues that are out there, that there's not enough talent to go around. But I'm on the other side of that fence. There's more than enough talent. It's just up to the coaches to find it and develop it. And I mean, you're a perfect example of that. People kept giving you opportunities, and eventually you got to the point where you deserved that opportunity and you took it and ran with it. And that's where we see you today. So, I mean, it's a perfect example of what can happen when you give time to these players to develop, because honestly, at the pro game, the way it's developed now, you can't really get the reps that you used to be able to get maybe 20 years ago. So, I mean, it's a totally different game for guys like yourself that can't get reps at certain areas, and they need to get those reps to grow. So, I mean, it's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
So without further ado, we'll talk a little bit more about what happened. You at the end of 2019, you had been with several colleges, several pro teams. How do you go about learning a new playbook and ultimately developing chemistry with your receivers and everything that goes into being a quarterback so quickly?
Well, as far as learning a new playbook, it's really just learning different verbiage with it. The schemes and the concepts never really do change as long as you understand the big picture as far as how to read the defense, like what routes work against certain coverages and whatnot. It's just a matter of understanding the verbiage with it. Developing chemistry with different receivers is something that I always made a big emphasis on, but I never really understood the full grasp of knowing what work is good work and useful work, and what work is redundant and it's not useful of your time. It took me until probably I want to say with the Stags last year to really understand and conceptualize like when it's actually no, not even then. Probably back in like 2017, 2018, when my trainer Johnny Carlisle, my mentor, was training me, and he would stop me sometimes midway through our training sessions because he said it was already enough work. You don't need to do more than that. And then I was able to carry that into other situations in life where, okay, is this just overwork or is this useful work? And by doing that and understanding what you're trying to get out of it, you only really need about 1-2 extra reps with your receivers to really get chemistry and really understand. And if they're really struggling with it, well, then you make sure that they understand the big picture that goes along with it, so that way when they do get on the field and they are able to understand how you throw the ball and they are able to understand your timing, they're able to, not have to think as much and just react.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in this 3-year stretch, you kind of prefaced it earlier, you attended something like 28 different tryouts with assorted leagues and teams. Can you give us a quick rundown of some of the teams that gave you looks?
Yeah, so out of these teams that I was, trying out for, I did generate interest from the Philadelphia Soul a couple times. The Albany Empire did have interest in me. The Iowa Barnstormers did have interest in me. Let's see who else. When I went to the pro day for Rutgers, I was able to garnish interest from the Panthers, the Jets, as well as the Titans at Rutgers Pro Day. And then, I was able to hook on with the FCF, Jersey Flight, Salina Liberty, as well as the Reading Raptors and the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks, all 5 pro teams. But even then, like after my season with the New Jersey Stags, I ended up receiving calls from, the West Texas Warbirds. I was actually signed to be the quarterback for the Magnolia State Spartans, a new league in the AFA. And I ended up getting an opportunity with the FCF. The Amarillo Venom, I think their name is called, ended up contacting me. And then there was one more team. It was the Idaho Horsemen was the team that contacted me as well. So, and then the Southwestern Kansas Storm. And then there was, I think, 1 or 2 more teams that I can't really think of right now. But
absolutely,
a lot of interest over, the past few years. I mean, I knew that I was going to get that. It was really all a matter of, what's the best opportunity, what's the right fit for me at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I thought it was kind of funny when I was researching your career. I've talked to a lot of players recently that COVID kind of threw them off track. It kind of derailed their career. It was a big setback. For you, it kind of seemed like it was the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It was like almost when you started picking up momentum.
Really
during this fall season, my mind was blown when I heard that you actually played for 3 different outdoor teams at the same time. How did you even manage this? I mean, how did you have the time to practice and play with 3 different teams?
Well, the thing is with that is, one, it was actually 2 teams. And then the other thing, too, is that we had practice twice a week. And it was right after my work schedule when I worked for Lifetime Athletic. But we would have games on Saturday, and then their feeder team, who I was the starter for at that time, would have games on Sunday, the West Philly Marauders. And shout out to my boys from West Philly. It was definitely beating up your body, but it was good experience that I was able to get in a game situation. And also, too, being able to get the experience to, be a leader amongst a different group of guys that, I was learning so many things, just not only about being a football player, but also being a man and as a person as well. Understanding that, the racial barriers that, I didn't realize that I had, but I needed to, but I did have at that time, if that makes sense. I was able to understand and to see so much more and just be more compassionate based on some of the situations that I was hearing from my teammates at that time, being the only white player on my team, or one of two only white players on my team at that time, and being able to have a certain and a different type of understanding and a different type of compassion, and also understand too different types of communication to be able to go along with it as well. There was so much to really be learned that even after that season was over, and even though we didn't get what we wanted, which was a league championship, or even at that time an independent league championship in the Sunday league that I was in, it carried me so much in my career, and being able to enhance this communication and those interpersonal skills with different groups of people, and learning how to work with different groups of people, and forming that all around leadership capability and leadership quality that I bring to any team that I'm with.
Absolutely. So how many players actually played for both teams, or was it just you?
Almost all of them.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Almost all of them. Those guys would kill their bodies one night and then come back and do it the same exact day, or the very next day. Excuse me. For me, it's like there's no time to complain, because you got 53 of your brothers out there, or how many else was out there, doing the same exact thing. So for me, there was no complaining, there was no bitching about it. I just wanted to go out and be able to do it with them.
Absolutely. So in 2021, after this marathon man stretch you just had, you ended up landing with the Jersey Flight, again reuniting with Warren Smith. I think this was the third time you guys had actually either worked out or played together.
Second.
But he tried out with the Philadelphia Soul as well, right? In 2016?
No, he didn't. Aaron trying out with the Philadelphia Soul.
Okay.
But he was actually with the Philadelphia Soul the year.
That's where it was. Okay. I was going to say, I know I saw that on his background. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Philadelphia Soul. He was with the Washington Valor. He was with the Steelhawks. And I think he was with the Spokane Shock in his rookie year. He was also with the Washington Valor. And then where else was he? Oh, yeah, he was with the Blackjacks as well. He was a hell of a player for the Blackjacks.
Nice. So you kind of spoke about it before, but I'm going to go ahead and ask again. What is your guys' relationship like? Is he still helping you to this day?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually talked the other day. He was studying coverages, and I was like, it was funny. It was like a little inside joke, because I was able to say, like, I spy, and the coverage that I thought I was seeing was sky. I sky with my little eye a corner who's about to get burned on a pogo route, which is a post and go. And, you got to chuckle about it. And then we just started talking about coverages. We started talking about football. And then every once in a while, I just keep him updated with everything that's going on in my career. Like, he asked me a little bit about the league, like how it was going and whatnot. But, we have a really, really good relationship. Like, if I ever needed a question, especially revolving just around football, and I was kind of confused with something, I know that he would, answer it without any hesitation.
That's awesome. So after the 2021 season ended with the Fleet, you moved on to another Arena League team, this time the New Jersey Stags, all kind of staying up in that East Coast area.
Yeah.
At one point, you had said that you wanted to play in the South or on the West Coast. Was that just to get away from home? Or, how did that all come about?
Well, I didn't say that I wanted to play on in the South or the West Coast. It's just that I was going to so many tryouts to get my name recognized, that I ended up being out there as well. But what was that other question about the Stags?
Oh, man. Oh, how were you able to find success? You found the Stags, and how did you become one of the top-ranked quarterbacks in the league despite not playing a full season?
Well, luckily, I was able to have some of my guys over there, as well as a ownership with BJ Freeland, who actually is a player over there. I don't know how that guy does it. He is the owner, and he's also one of their key players. That's still like my team, like one of our key players over there. He pretty much gave everything to me that I really didn't need, based on what he saw. If he saw that we needed help at receiver, he went and he got it with my boy Johnny Taylor. And then later on, my boy Mark Edwards. If he saw that, I had a better relationship with somebody out there, over somebody else, and he would make sure that they were out there, and it was really good to just be able to get with guys that I had complete chemistry with, but also be able to use all the foundation and all the knowledge that I learned from previous years' experience, to where when I would make a mistake, I would go back and recognize, like, okay, this is what I did wrong on that play. This is what I did. This is how I correct it. And this is what I talked about before, about utilizing time effectively.
Absolutely. So in 2022, you were brought into training camp with the Salina Liberty.
Yep.
Who were coming off a playoff appearance in 2021. During your stint with the team, you actually competed against future FCF and CFL quarterbacks Mitch Kidd and Tyree Adams.
Yep.
What was that like? I mean, those guys are pretty prolific quarterbacks where they're at now.
Well, here's the thing: is that I ended up competing with, or not really competing with Mitch, but just being with Mitch in the FCF. He was actually there the year before, but it was so cool to just be with Ree. Ree is not only a hell of a quarterback, but he might be a better person to go along with that. I mean, from day one, he was so supportive. He helped me out with so much. We talked about the run game so much, in helping me understand that. He's just the ultimate team guy, and like everything he's really gotten over his career, he's not only earned it as a player, but he's also learned it just as a team, or earned it as a team leader as well.
Absolutely. So shortly after this, you were unfortunately released, but it led to the opportunity that brought us together, actually. So how does your FCF opportunity end up coming about?
Well, like I said, I ended up with Danny Southwick over the phone, because I wanted to know exactly how I could get into a pro day with Rutgers. Like, if they were just gonna throw me out the door if I got there. And then, after making sure that I could get in and asking the right questions, he ended up asking me, well, what are you doing this Sunday? And then I said, not anything. And he said, well, you should come to the last FCF tryout in Atlanta. And then, luckily my grandfather was the one who bought the plane ticket. I ended up coming down here. I ended up showing up and signed a contract, right after I had my pro day.
Very nice. Very nice. So for those of you who don't know, Danny Southwick is kind of an arena football legend. He's played for a long, long time. How is he involved with the FCF?
Well, he's actually one of the players. So I don't know how he got his opportunity to come here. I mean, whether he was at a tryout or just his his reputation, he deserves to be here, and he's one of the not only best quarterbacks that have been around, but he's one of the smartest quarterbacks that have been around as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How did you guys come in touch?
Well, we were teammates together with the flight.
Gotcha. Okay.
When making sure that I understood conceptually how to play the one-man arena game, I mean, him and Warren Smith were really, really helpful for me. And then watching them just bounce ideas off each other in a meeting room was crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the big things that I like about the FCF is their arena. The arena you guys play in is just so rustic and cool looking. I was doing a little bit of research on your career and kind of looking into everything about the FCF, and it turns out that's actually a former industrial complex.
Yeah, it's actually a former railroad complex, I think. I mean, it's right next to a railroad. I'm not too sure exactly the history behind it, even though I am a history buff. I'm not too sure the whole entire history about it. But all I know is that when I walked into it the first time, I was like, how the hell are we going to play football here? And boy, did they do a great job in making that an incredible stadium for so many people to come in.
No doubt. It is so cool to watch on on Twitch streams and whatnot. It just seems like such a cool venue to play in as a player.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on
that. So we talked off screen. You're a little bit of an anime guy. Do you play video games at all?
Oh, yeah.
So did you ever play NFL Street?
Street a couple times. I got my ass kicked in there. I'm more Madden, ESPN 2K5. Shout out to T.O.
There you go. Exactly. The reason I was asking is because that venue reminds me of like an NFL Street venue.
It really does.
Running off the walls and stuff. But anyway, totally different subject. just kind of popped up.
Well, it's crazy because all the graffiti art that's over there, like my mentor and I, he's a big he's really big in photography, and he's really big in art as well. And so he loves a lot of graffiti art. So, the gym that he used to own was called Cage Performance Center. That was the epitome of his gym, which was the artistic flow that kind of just matched with everything, the graffiti art. It was crazy. And so when I came down here, it was like, bro, this is exactly like my element.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you signed with the FCF, a league that has a weekly player selection draft. How have you had to adjust as a player, not knowing where you're going to play on a weekly basis? I mean, I know you're in the same stadium, but I mean, as far as team-wise.
Well, it's really about getting the chemistry down with the players, because the players are all the same for every team. The verbiage is still all the same for every team. It's just a matter of getting the chemistry down with the guys that are there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So which teams have you played for so far this season?
So I played with the Bored Apes week 1. And then right after that, I actually didn't get drafted to a team the second week. I was supposed to be an emergency quarterback for the Zappers that week. So because I didn't get drafted, I said, okay, this league is about exposure. This league is about, embracing with the community. I'm just going to get my name out there. So then I put my name out in the chat and I said, hey guys, I didn't get drafted this week. Please tell me how to get drafted. And then all of a sudden my, Discord inbox just started blowing up. And then the Glacier Boyz welcomed me into their chat. So that's actually when I was with the Zappers. But, I was at that time, I didn't know that I was going to go play for them. So I was basically scheming like how to beat them. And they were really welcome about it. They were like, hey, if we ever have the chance to draft you, we're going to do it. And I sat out that week. I went to CVS. I got a sign. It's actually right here. I ended up getting a sign that said this. It said practice squad quarterback. It had my social media page on here, and it also had my credentials that are on here as well. It said student of the game. I had 5 years of pro experience, and I could push the ball down the field. And then in big capitalized letters, it titled hungry. So I got a lot of exposure, not only from the league, but from NBC. Alexa was there. Keith, forget his last name, but he does and his partner Matt, they did a segment on me on their show, which was really cool. I'm actually going to do a segment with Keith as well. And then, I ended up getting told about 2 or 3 minutes beforehand, before the game even started with the Zappers, that, hey, go get dressed. And it was because I ended up forming a good relationship with Johnny Manziel at that time, that he went over. He knew that he was only going to play a series or two. So he said, hey, if I'm only going to play a series or two, then he should play as well. So he came over. He said, you're in. And, I got thrusted in there. I ended up playing not as well as, I had hoped that I was going to play. But then the very next week, I got into Man Up Challenge. I did really well. And the Glacier Boyz drafted me. And pretty much all it is from there.
Talk to me about the Man Up Challenge. I'm not aware of what that is.
So it's basically one-on-ones televised. So you're in your whatever team's jersey that week. So for me, it was the Zappers. And, it's basically everybody else is in their team's jersey of that week. And they're one-on-one with either a DB or a linebacker. So it could be a tight end. It could be a running back. It could be a receiver. And if you go on a streak, that streak counts towards, your ability to win the Man Up Challenge. And if you win the Man Up Challenge, if you're an offensive defensive lineman, you get $500. If you're a D-back or linebacker, you get $500. Or if you're a receiver and quarterback, you split the $500 together and you get $250 apiece.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, how does the pay work? So if I feel free to not answer that question, but if you're not drafted in a week,
Unfortunately, I'm not going to disclose that from the FCF. I apologize, but
no, you're good. You're good. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Obviously, that wasn't on the list. Otherwise, you would have told me not to ask it. But who's your favorite target so far? I have a feeling I know who it's going to be, but
yeah, I think you already know. It is.
Yeah.
It is one of my very good friends here, AJ Andrew Jamil.
Absolutely. I kind of figured that was the answer that was coming. And I
But
mean, you've
tell
played
you,
with some.
I got to tell you, Cedric Bird and Harrison Dreher, they're pretty damn good too. And Keon Thomas is pretty legit as well. And surprise, surprise, but we're also getting a celebrity receiver tomorrow. Like not the AJ Green, but the social media based AJ Green, who is also a hell of a receiver. He played for the Sea Lions last year in the spring league.
Really?
We got studs. So AJ's a great receiver, but so are the rest of the guys.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bird. Dreher is also fun to watch, but really all of them. You guys are stacked on offense. I mean, really you are.
And the thing is, I mean, we're just not. We're completely selfless. We are completely selfless. We care about one another, and we want to play better for one another. We don't care who gets the ball, and really, I don't care how many times I pass the ball game. And if we're 60, 70, 60, 40, 70, 30 base running to throwing, then that's all that matters. I just care about if we win the game or not.
Absolutely. So, okay, you're heading into week 4. You're still technically a backup at this point. At this point, it's behind Izzy. He ultimately goes down in the game, like we talked about earlier.
Yep.
The score's sitting at 20-6. Talk to me about your mindset walking into the game. I mean, you've talked about it earlier. You're a man that fights anxiety at times.
Yeah.
How did you feel stepping in the middle of, all the lights are on, people are watching, you're down by 14, and you just walk in, and what's the feeling?
Well, my conquering of anxiety, hopefully that's the right word for it. And if my grandma is watching over me, she's probably killing me right now because I think that's bad grammar. But for me, I was able to kind of get a hold of that when I was playing for the Stags. So that wasn't a fear of mine at all. And really, I didn't have any fear of going into the game. It was really the number one concern I had was, is he okay? And then after he was able to walk off the field and get off the field, then I was able to kind of just dial in and just compartmentalize. And I said, the first thing I said when I got in the huddle, I was like, all right, guys, just calm down. Just have fun. If we get in the end zone, great. If not, let's try to end this game with a bang. And then, me and Bryce Aline, we ended up, just not having a good exchange on the handoff. And I completely take responsibility for that. And then, Quantez Stickers, hell of a player over here. He ends up taking it for a touchdown, and now we're down 28-6. So at that point, it's just like, okay, we're probably going to throw a lot. So catch the ball, find an open receiver downfield. Did that, and then once they started, disguising coverages, I was like, oh, I've seen this before. And then just putting it out there in the open space for the guy to go get it, and then everybody across the board, like. Everybody was making plays. I mean, Cedric was making plays. AJ was making plays. Big Hurt, Harrison Dreher, call him Big Hurt. He was making plays. I mean, we were just flowing and cooking as an offense. And unfortunately, Bryce didn't see the field for that whole series. But the very next week we got a chance to play together, and we played pretty well. And we're hoping to do the same this week.
Absolutely. You'll have to bear with me for a minute because I want to play that highlight. But it did not upload when I was talking to you earlier, apparently. So we'll see if I can get it to play. There we go. Cool.
This guy throws a very nice ball, right? He's accurate. He knows where to go with the ball. And let's see if he can provide a spark for this Glacier Boyz passing game.
I wake up every minute with the fever dreams. I push a mind to a limit where it needs to be. I work blind, got vision I don't need to see. I'm picking mind over matter, I believe in me. I need to find more hours in the day to breathe. Need to find more power in the way I be. And when my mind turns sour with the painful scenes, I need to scream out loud, I can't stop me. I wanna be the greatest like Rocky. I leave them all hating like a hobby. I'm out here making moves like a lobby. And if you ain't with me, it's your loss. See, I got my mind on the facts, I'm a python. Grab what I like real fast, choke until I have everything I attack, everything that I lack, everything that I want, and I see, matter of fact. I'm my own worst enemy. Only if I let it be. I can control anything if I can just think carefully. I control my destiny. Deep up in my mind I manifest it. Every morning I wake up obsessed, and everything I do the best. And deep within my mind I'll always manifest it. you better love me. Look what I'm becoming. In my mind I'm running all around circles. Better thoughts are coming. And my mind is like a reflex. It knows just what I need next. If I could just believe that, I know I can turn all of my thoughts into a real threat.
All right, so for those of you watching, I didn't just throw Dragon Ball Z in there for no reason. We were talking on the phone the other night, and Chris let me know that he happens to be a fan as much as I am, so I had to throw that in there. And I was even torn on it. I had to get a couple opinions before I posted it, and luckily Chris liked it, so you guys got to see it as well. What? Oh, sorry, my son wants me to tell you that next time it's going to be Naruto.
And that's a rock, paper, scissors on that one.
He's a big Naruto fan all of a
is?
sudden. I don't know why, but
I've never watched it, though.
Yeah, me neither. He keeps telling me I need to get into it.
I'm only into Dragon Ball Z, really just the whole Dragon Ball series. But
Really?
everybody's been telling me the same thing. You got to watch more anime. I'm like, I'm good.
That's funny because I'm the exact same way. It was basically Dragon Ball Z or nothing for me back in the day. I mean, I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh when I was a little kid, but
Me
we
too.
won't get into that.
Me too.
So as you guys just saw, Chris enters the game with less than 2 minutes on the clock. Very quickly, he puts up 14 points. I mean, you saw big plays by Bird, as we mentioned, Jamil, Dreher. Just talk about how you felt as you just started dicing up the defense like that.
I just felt calm, and in the moment, I was just taking everything one play at a time, just like I did with the Stags. It was kind of the similar, mentality. And then I realized that when you do that, good things happen. Taking those things that I learned from, Warren, taking those things that I learned from Danny, taking those things from, that I learned from, my idols, and watching some of their documentaries and really analyzing the psychological approach, like Brady, like Rogers, like Breeze, understanding those things and then really honing them and honing those while I was on the field and just taking everything just one play at a time, because anything can happen in football. I mean, as you saw at the beginning of when I got in, we ended up messing up the exchange and they returned it for a touchdown, but we still weren't out of the game. And, if you played it's not your fault, but if you watch the entire game, we were pretty much in that thing until the end. Just me and Jamil were just not on the same page on that last play, but then we ended up getting on the same page in practice, and now we're completely on the same page. So it's kind of like, anything can happen in football. It's just about how you approach it and, how you get better from it and how you grow from it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I didn't want to include the last couple passes, but as Chris just alluded to,
that's good.
There was a couple of passes in the end zone that were a little off the mark, but at the same time, at that point, they were only down by 8. Unfortunately, that fumble was actually the deciding factor in the game ultimately. So like you said, unfortunately, anything can happen in a game. You kind of fell on the losing side of that one. But as you mentioned in practice, you guys obviously got right because you came out in week 5 firing.
Yep. And we got to continue to do it again. I mean, that's why I never guarantee victories, and I never say, well, I don't know about this team, because anything can happen in football. The only thing that you can really control is just your approach to this individual play, this play. And then if that doesn't work out, then you go back out the next play and you do the best you can that play. But you just leave it out on the field, and then you just bond with the guys that are there and just know that, that you got each other's backs, and just be selfless with it. And I feel like if you do that, you can go a very, very long way in this game.
Absolutely. So before we get into your week 5 performance you had, I'm curious about your first 4 weeks and getting a chance to play prominent time and a key moment in the game. What is your overall opinion on the FCF from a player's view? What are the pros and cons of the league for you as a player?
Really have nothing bad to say about the league. I mean, they do a great job of just taking care of us as players. Not only that, but giving us this exposure that we need to show the higher leagues that we can play as well.
Absolutely. So we finally made it this past weekend. Like I just talked about, you basically diced up the defense most of the day. You ended up collecting your first victory, your first rushing touchdown. I'm going to play a quick highlight again to show the rushing touchdown.
Yeah. You just know I hate talking about myself, but go ahead.
I'm sorry, but this whole interview is about you, so
I
we're going to
know.
go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and mute this one though, because
Sure.
we can talk through it. But at the same time, it was definitely fun to see. I was not aware that was actually your first career rushing touchdown, so that was fun to find out.
Since high school.
Since high school, gotcha. Okay,
Since high school. That was insane.
Crazy. So this is kind of showcasing your relationship, or I guess your chemistry with AJ, Andrew Jamil.
Well, it was funny because the timing is there, but I was actually being told in the headset by Coach Marvin that the storm is there, or the out's going to be there. Out's going to be there. Take it, and I took it, and he helped me out with that play big time. And then this one was just recognition of knowing that it's man coverage. I knew that I had him matched up with somebody, and he made a great play. And unfortunately, he got a shoestring tackle. And then this was just me recognizing that they kept crashing, and knowing that it's 4th and 1, that they were going to more than likely crash on it again. I knew it could get about 1 yard, but I didn't know it was going to open up that much. And I was like, oh, my God, I got the ball. Oh, my God, there's an opening. Oh, my God, please don't trip me. Oh, wow, I scored a touchdown. This is fun. Let me swivel my hips a little bit.
I love the celebration.
Let me go
into it.
From West Side for my guys back home.
That's awesome. So we won't make you sit through the whole thing. But yeah, it was definitely fun to see. I obviously tuned in and watched the whole game, so it was awesome to see you pick up your first victory and your first rushing touchdown in the FCF.
Yeah.
But ultimately, on top of everything, you've kind of positioned yourself as a starter going forward for what might end up being a playoff run. How does this feel after everything you've been through?
Really, any week that I have an opportunity to just get better is joyful enough as it is. Like it's a great experience right now just to, be the starter. I just try to take every play one opportunity at a time, and one more chance to really show, the world that the Glacier Boyz are for real. To show this week that the Glacier Boyz are for real, and that's really my focus. And my focus is not getting to the playoffs. My focus is, that is obviously, but my focus and my main focus is what do we got to do this week to beat the Zappers? And we do that every week since we've worked together. Last week we met together as a group and watched film together. Tomorrow we're going to meet together as a group and watch defense together, just to figure out what they're going to do against us and different looks that they give us, because this is the 3rd week in a row that we're going to be playing against the same defense. So and these guys do a great job of just embracing that and knowing that it's going to take a full effort to get better, and that embraces that close-knit bond that we all have as a group.
I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to mention the fact that you played the same defense 2 weeks in a row and actually played Quantez Steers, who I interviewed last week, following his return for a touchdown. But how do you approach that? Is it an advantage having seen the defense 3 weeks in a row? Is it a disadvantage because they've seen you 3 weeks in a row?
Well, it can be both, and that's the thing is that what defenses that they like to play, but they also know the tendencies of you. So it's about, okay, how can they adjust to those tendencies, and what plays can we run out of that to kind of beat that that adjustment, so that we can get in the defense that they like. And that's what I mean by football is such a up and down game that anything can happen, and I don't really take anything for granted in that regard. So even though it's like, yeah, we're playing against the same defense, well, they have another opportunity to scheme against us. They could say, well, yeah, we're playing against the same offense again, and we have another opportunity to go out and beat them. And we know what they like to do. We know how they like to run. They could stack the box this week in 4th and 1, and then they could neutralize me being able to run. They could play. They could play a little bit of disguised man coverage, even though it looks like zone. There's a lot of, or they could run cloud or frontside cloud out of trips. There's a lot of things that they can do. So I'm just trying to stay ready for it and stay ready for the opportunity.
Absolutely. There's a lot of different ways you can go. Obviously, the other team knows that you're going to be looking for tendencies, so they're probably going to try and call some tendency breakers. So that makes perfect sense. And especially disguising coverages if you think you know what you're looking for.
Exactly.
So following this victory, you told me off camera that the FCF did something that we really had to highlight. They ended up contacting you about donating to a charity on your behalf, just, based on your play. Talk to me about the charity that they're donating to on your behalf and your personal ties to that charity.
So it's actually, if I did a touchdown celebration, if I threw touchdowns, I think this weekend or last weekend, I don't remember. But I told them to donate to children with special needs, and it's because I not only sympathize with kids in that position because at the end of the day, even though they're different, we're all different, and they just want to be heard and they want to be accepted just like I do. But also too is that my fiance is actually a child therapist that specializes with children with special needs and children on the autistic spectrum as well. So for me, it was a big deal to be able to donate to that cause or have somebody donate to that cause because it's a demographic of people that I feel definitely deserve the recognition and spotlight that maybe others don't give them.
Absolutely. I mean, that was so cool to hear from a fan's perspective. I mean, I'm quickly becoming a huge fan of the FCF based on the production value, the way they approach the fan interaction. And that was just another thing that I heard that was just like, you know what, this league has the right idea. They have an idea on how to develop players, how to bring in players that are entertaining to watch, that are fun stories, stuff like that. And it's just another step that in entrenching themselves as a football league, in my thought.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to kind of talk about how we first came in touch. Can you tell people why you and I originally came in contact with each other, or is that something you don't want to discuss quite yet?
Absolutely. So I saw that you were basically doing some writing for the XFL, and I reached out to you and, told you that I was going to be on a list for the XFL combines. And then we just got to talking about my story, and then I just showed you a bunch of pictures and then highlighted points of my career, and we're at where we are today.
Absolutely. So as he just mentioned, he will be at the XFL showcases. In my personal opinion, he's got a really good shot at making it. There's a lot of quarterback depth, but he's definitely one of the more interesting names on the list for sure. Without really naming names, you might not even know which players are coming. You probably do, though. I've heard that a lot of your FCF teammates and other players throughout the league are ultimately looking to the XFL for their next opportunity. Why do you think the XFL is so attractive for players like yourselves? And is this something you guys have spoken about, or is it just kind of hush-hush at the moment?
Well, it's kind of hush-hush because we're just trying to focus on our season with the FCF. But I think the reason why the XFL is, getting that type of recognition is just because it's another step up. It's another step up to, get into a higher league, get into a different league, and go against new competition.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. I mean, we've always talked about tiers in football, and the FCF is definitely getting up there on the tier list, but they are still slightly below the XFL if you kind of look at it that way.
Yeah.
So have you talked to any of your teammates about trying to link up at these showcases to try and play on your chemistry a little bit?
No, not really. I mean, there really hasn't even been chatter about it, just because we're just so laser and locked in on what we're doing right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
As it should be.
Like I'm just really focused on what's going on this season with the FCF because we're not done yet.
Absolutely. And hopefully we see a playoff run.
Absolutely. Hopefully.
So we talked about your past and your present. Now I want to leave you with a couple questions about your future.
Yep.
Assuming you do end up landing with the XFL, is there a coach in the league right now that you would prefer to land with, or is it kind of wherever you land, you're going to take the opportunity and run with it?
Yeah, wherever I land, I'm just going to take the opportunity and run with it. I mean, all the coaches themselves, you're getting some sort of NFL experience behind it. So wherever I land up, I'm just going to make the most of my opportunity.
Absolutely. So we talked about it before. You're only 27 years old in a day and age where we see quarterbacks playing into their 40s. I'm sorry, 28?
28, yep.
Oh, I thought you said vice versa, that I had typed 28. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
You're fine.
I'll have to change that on the list too, apparently.
You're fine.
So what can you do, or what can you see yourself doing long term? Are you a coach eventually? Are you going to be an executive? Will you even be involved with football?
Well, I'm going to keep playing until I physically can't anymore. I know that my even though my wife, my fiance, supports it, she doesn't necessarily like it, but she understands and she sympathizes with my passion for the game. So I'm definitely going to be playing, hopefully, well into my 40s. Even though it's not guaranteed, I want to keep doing it. But right now I have a job with Smart RIA, which is a company that specializes with software compliance management. And I basically do cold calling for that job, making sure that companies have their ethical and legal documents. So I'm kind of working up the ladder right now with my job. I want to continue to do that, even into my football career. And I also do personal training on the side as well. So there's plenty of opportunities for me, past football career. Maybe I would like to get into coaching one day. I'm just not entirely sure yet. Maybe I'd like to be in an executive role, but really the focus is kind of just on here and now, because I'm doing well for myself, not only in the game, but out of the game as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of my fellow YouTubers out there, Big Play Slay, says you're all some goats and you're all going up. So I assume that he means to the XFL or maybe the NFL. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and let you get out of here, man. I've had you on the hook for about an hour and a half now. That was a little bit longer than I was expecting this to run.
Yeah.
So it's like, almost 10 o'clock, almost 11 o'clock on your side of the world?
Yeah, it's 10:40 over here, but hey, it was worth every single minute of it, and I appreciated it.
Hey, man, both ways. That goes both ways for sure. Like I said off camera, you guys like yourself are allowing me to pursue my dreams and show my kids that it's possible to pursue your dreams. So, and obviously I wanted to hear your story for myself. I mean, I got to see it and read it, but hearing it from your mouth, it was a little bit different for sure.
Yep, absolutely. So, and I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, hope you win this week. I'll definitely be watching as always. If you guys are watching now, definitely make sure to check out the Glacier Boyz this weekend. And let's root for Chris to get another victory. Let's call some plays for him too, hopefully. Got any requests while you're here?
Any help we can get, we'll take. So we appreciate all the support. And, we're going out to get a win this week, hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, have a great rest of your night, man. And I appreciate you joining me. And I hopefully you can stay in touch in the future.
Absolutely. We definitely will.
Okay, cool. Have a great night, man.
You too, man. Take care.
All right, later. So again, that was Chris Barrett, quarterback for the FCF's Glacier Boyz. I quickly became a fan of his just based off conversations we had off camera. Like I said, he approached me about my XFL article. He was one of the first players that approached me, actually. And it was one of those situations where he just came across as a genuine guy. He sent me a lot of information about himself. He was really, forthcoming about everything he's been through and everything he's kind of fought through to get where he's at. And it was one of those situations where I've always been the type to root for an underdog. And Chris has always kind of been that underdog, and he's always continued to defy odds and find opportunities wherever they may lie. And he's the type of guy that I love to root for, because at the end of the day, he's not going to give up. So it's awesome to see him finally finding some success on a high octane, high profile stage in the FCF. And like I said before, if you haven't checked out a fan controlled football game, I'm going to go ahead and play a highlight to take us out. Now that Chris isn't available, he can watch it at home. But yeah, I'm going to play that last highlight that we brought up, and just go ahead and look at the actual gameplay, look at the production value, and see how the FCF brings their fans in, because I personally am a huge fan of how they produce the games.